The crystal chandeliers glowed like stars trapped in ice, casting soft light over a ballroom that smelled of money and confidence. Laughter bounced off the marble floors, sharp and effortless, as tuxedos and flowing gowns drifted past one another like currents in a golden sea. But near the edge of the room stood a man who felt invisible. His shoes were worn thin at the soles, his suit clearly borrowed, sleeves just a little too long. His face held the strain of too many nights without sleep, too many worries left unsaid. He knew he didn't belong here. Every instinct told him to turn around and leave. But somehow, fate had nudged him through those doors anyway. And then, without warning, everything stopped. A small girl in a pale satin dress slipped free from the crowd, her tiny shoes tapping across the polished floor. She ran straight toward him and wrapped her shaking arms around his legs. "Daddy," she sobbed. That single word hit the room like a dropped glass. Conversations died. Music faltered. Eyes turned. If this moment already tugs at your heart, take a second to like, comment, and subscribe to Whispers of Kindness, so you never miss stories that remind us what truly matters. Stuart Ethan Hayes had never tasted luxury, not even once. At 35, his life was built on exhaustion. He hauled heavy crates before sunrise and scrubbed plates long after midnight. Every dollar he made went toward one purpose: raising his 6-year-old daughter. Lily, she was his reason for waking up, the small light guiding him through days that often felt endless. On the night her mother died, Ethan had held her hand and made a promise he couldn't take back. He swore Lily would have a better life. But promises feel heavier when you're poor, and more nights than he cared to admit. Ethan felt like he was sinking beneath the weight of his own words. That evening, he was running on fumes. He had no reason to be anywhere near the city's most expensive hotel. Still, a co-worker from the restaurant had pressed an invitation into his palm. "It's a charity gala," his friend had said. His friend had tried to sound casual while explaining it. "Free food, maybe a few connections. You never know who might help you out." Ethan had laughed it off at first. Places like that weren't built for people like him. Still, something deep inside stirred a small, desperate spark that refused to go out. Maybe tonight, just maybe, someone would finally see past the rough edges and notice his worth. He borrowed a jacket that hung awkwardly on his shoulders, knotted an old tie with frayed ends, and stepped into a world that sparkled with money he'd never hold. His gaze flicked from table to table, each one stacked with gold-rimmed plates and crystal glasses that caught the light. He felt swallowed whole, lost in the music and the low hum of voices that passed right through him, as if he didn't exist. Then he saw her. A little girl, about Lily's age, stood alone near the edge of the room. She wore a pale blue gown, a neat bow tucked into her hair. While everyone else laughed and mingled, she scanned the crowd with growing panic, as if something precious had slipped away. Her eyes met Ethan's. He meant to look away, but before he could, she took off running. Her small shoes slapped against the marble as she crossed the floor. "Daddy," she cried, her voice cracking with relief. Ethan froze. His body locked up, breath caught in his chest. She crashed into him and wrapped her tiny arms around his legs like she'd finally found safety. A sharp gasp rippled through the room. Conversations died mid. A woman dripping in diamonds clutched her chest. Somewhere nearby, a champagne glass slipped and shattered across the marble. Ethan crouched down, gently trying to loosen her grip. "Sweetheart," he whispered, forcing a smile. "I think you've got the wrong person." But when she looked up at him, her wide, tear-filled eyes trembling with fear and hope, something inside him broke wide open. There was a deep loneliness in her eyes, one Ethan knew far too well. It was the same hollow look Lily wore whenever she asked questions about the mother she could barely remember. That quiet ache that lived behind a child's bravery. Before Ethan could find the right words, a sharp voice sliced through the stunned silence, firm, commanding, polished by years of being obeyed. Clara. The crowd split instantly as a woman strode forward, tall and regal in a flowing emerald gown. Heads bowed without realizing it. This was Margaret Sinclair, the widow of billionaire Charles Sinclair, one of the most powerful women in the city. Behind her trailed assistants, lawyers, and reporters hungry for a story. The little girl tightened her grip on Ethan's leg and leaned closer. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "don't let them take me." Ethan's chest clenched painfully. Margaret stopped just inches away, her gaze sharp and calculating as it locked onto him. "Who are you?" she demanded, every syllable heavy with authority. Ethan swallowed hard. I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice shaking. "She thought I was." He didn't finish. The girl cut in, gripping his hand with surprising strength. "He's my daddy," she said firmly. "I know it. I can feel it." The room exploded with sound. Whispers surged like a rising tide. Cameras lifted. Flashes went off like lightning strikes. Ethan's ears rang as his world tilted out of control. He had walked in hoping for a warm meal, maybe a slim chance at work. Instead, he stood frozen before the city's elite, accused without words, holding the hand of a child he had never met but who refused to let him go. Met, yet calling him father with a certainty that shook the room. Margaret's lips pressed into a thin, furious line. Without hesitation, she snapped her fingers, and 2 security guards stepped forward. "Remove him," she ordered coldly. Ethan tried to speak, tried to explain, but the girl's grip was unbreakable. She sobbed as the guards pried her from him, her cries echoing through the ballroom. Ethan could have walked away then. He could have slipped back into the shadows where he belonged. But he didn't. Something deep inside him stirred, a quiet voice telling him this wasn't an accident. This was fate knocking, and it wasn't going to stop. The days that followed blurred into a nightmare. His face was everywhere. Newspapers splashed his picture across their pages. Headlines screamed about the mystery man from the Sinclair Gala. Whispers painted him as a con artist, a fraud trying to trick a billionaire family. Ethan's already fragile life began to crack. His boss warned him he might lose his dishwashing job. Lily asked why strangers stared and pointed at them on the street. Then one afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up outside his apartment. A man in a tailored suit stepped out and spoke calmly. "Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Sinclair requests your presence." Ethan wanted to shut the door and pretend none of this was real. He didn't belong in their world. But Clara's tearful eyes haunted him, so he went. The Sinclair estate felt unreal, towering iron gates, gardens sculpted like art walls that seemed to scrape the sky. Inside, Margaret waited, her face cold and unreadable. "We've done a test," she said without greeting. "DNA," she added flatly. "The results are unexpected." She slid an envelope across the table. Ethan's hands shook as he opened it. The words blurred, then hit him like a blow. Paternity confirmed. 99.9% probability. His chest tightened. What is this?" Margaret's voice cracked for the first time. Clara is yours. She's your daughter. Ethan shook his head in disbelief. That's impossible. I only ever, he stopped. A memory surfaced from Kalisha girl with laughter in her eyes, gone before he knew she was pregnant. Margaret sighed softly. Her mother never told you. She was my daughter. She passed last year. Clara has been searching ever since. Ethan staggered back, gripping a chair as the truth crashed over him. He had another child, one he never knew existed. At that moment, Clara burst into the room. She ran straight into his arms, wrapping herself around him. I knew it, she whispered through tears. I told them. I knew you were my daddy. Ethan's eyes burned as he held her close, his heart breaking and healing at the same time. From that day on, his life changed forever. Margaret resisted at first, afraid a struggling man couldn't raise a child of privilege. But Ethan's love was undeniable. He introduced Clara to Lily, and the two girls bonded instantly, like sisters reunited by destiny. The road ahead wasn't easy. The media hounded him. Strangers judged him. He often felt torn between two worlds. But through every struggle, Ethan kept the promise he made to both his daughters. They would never feel unloved. And slowly, even Margaret softened, realizing that true wealth wasn't money at all, but the character of the man who loved her granddaughter without condition.